Hey everybody, welcome to DB with Filmmakers. I am your host, DB or Dylan Black, and today we are talking with none other than Paul Stober, the actor from What's Left of Barry. Hey Paul, how are you?
Good, Dylan. How are you?
I'm noticing, ever since I shaved my head, we kind of have a resemblance here, a little
True.
bit.
That's true. Make a wish. Make a
Oh,
wish.
I'm feeling that now. How did you do that? We worked together on What's Left of Barry, which was a few years ago now. Do you remember from that time anything that like sticks to your mind about that project, or maybe taking on that character in the past, but back then?
I had been dealing with the Liberty Film program for a little while. I was kind of on their radar, and I just remember getting an email from you asking if I'd be interested in working on Barry. Yeah, let me send me the script and let me get a look at it, and I'll be happy to work with you on it. We had a little bit of a email going back and forth. I enjoyed the script a lot. I thought that it had something to say. Those are the kind of projects that are really interest me, is things that, have something to say. Well, I mean, it's the story. The story is everything. Finding the humanity of the story and finding the humanity of the character or characters. The storytelling that people do is, you hold the mirror up to the people and you kind of twist it a little bit. So it's as close to life as you can have it be, but it's understanding that you've got
The theatrical necessities or something.
Yeah.
And do you think that, like, with any of your projects that you take on, is it like finding where they fit in the world that's interesting?
What I can say is that there's a story that you want to tell. There's no such thing as becoming the character. You're using the person is using themselves. And so then you use yourself, your instrument, with these other attributes that you kind of tack onto it to become the character, and to find that's how you create the reality of it. Finding that story is how you manage it. At least that's the way I manage it.
I kind of want to talk about AI, how the illusion with that is so close that people mistrust everything that they see. The illusion there feels like it's breaking away, and how can that impact with someone who is a storyteller and they we want to play in the illusion, we want to be in that spot, but with that, do you feel like that's gonna hurt the people watching it? Do you feel like, or is that just gonna make it two separate things?
AI is very concerning to me as well.
Yeah.
All right, AI is not real. Right? Artificial. I don't want to say the threat, but I guess it could be considered a threat, is that people then take that out of the context of being AI and saying, recognizing that it is real.
Or even so, the disillusionment of like, it's not real, I don't care, I'm going to accept it as whatever it says it is.
Right. Both the actor and the audience has to go in understanding is that this is all the willing suspension of disbelief. As the actor, you have to have a willing suspension of disbelief. That means that you have to believe, for that moment, you have to believe that this is real. But that it's not real. When you go into the theater, that what you're watching is a story. You're using this story as a way to appeal to people's humanity. But if what you're doing, that you're trying to appeal to humanity with something which is artificial, there's something lost in that delusion.
I think that's the key word, is lost right there. The empathetic nature of humans is through storytelling, artificial intelligence. But I'll say this, I don't think that it's in a storytelling capacity does any good, because I want to tell a story because I'm bringing out my experience or whoever's experience and sharing that with someone else.
If you go back to the art of storytelling, it all goes back the way that a person understands what's happening in life. It was, they would try to understand, why is there thunder?
What exactly.
The gods are unhappy with us, and
exactly.
So now we're going to punish. And so it's the way of understanding the world. and somebody's place in it. And that's how, the story of Oedipus or any of the pieces by Sophocles,
Troy, the
any of them,
Iliad. Yeah.
all of that, the Iliad, the Odyssey, all of that. It's all about understanding the world.
I don't know if you're too much online or anything, but one thing that I feel like I see a lot is like judgment on the meta analysis of a story, where it's like, oh, this character, I don't enjoy this media because this character is a bad person or they make wrong decisions. When if you're thinking about it as like, well, okay, the alternative is just like everything is always good and they're always going to keep getting better or whatever. It's like that's cheap. You need
Right.
those characters, and we can't bring our judgment to these to art that has flaws and has those people that will grow and change.
Happens. I mean, that's what happens in somebody's everyday life. Not every challenge is going to be an earth shaking challenge, but it will be a challenge nonetheless, and it's how you manage it. If you've got something that gets in the way of that, as far as AI is concerned, they're talking about being able to bring back to life, putting James Dean.
Yeah. Do you know about the one with Val Kilmer? They already have a trailer for it.
Yeah, I've heard of
Yeah.
it. I've
It's
heard of it.
insane. I just
So
I can't see how anyone could watch that with like out feeling kind of gross.
it's almost like you're taking those people out of context.
Yeah. That's
Because
interesting.
when Val was living and he did, Tombstone and he did Top Gun and he was alive when he did those things. Now, if you take him out of that context and use his image, put it in a different context, that's really not him. That's somebody else's idea of him.
Where people could respond to that and be like, "Well, don't you deal with a different person every time you write something and then someone else reads it, or every time you're dealing with this another person's interpretation of you, But that's not the same thing, right?
No, no.
Yeah.
Now what you're dealing with, if somebody was to sit down and they say, well, list all the films that Val Kilmer was in, and then they add this particular film, that's a lie because he didn't do it. Somebody's creation of him in that role did it, but he didn't do it,
It's it's all terribly cheap. It saddens me. And the worst thing I think is if we don't in America don't push back on it in a cultural sense, then things like that people will get numb to it and then maybe eventually they'll accept it. And
Right.
that's a problem.
Well, that becomes dangerous. People then take that as the truth. What it
Yeah.
does, while it may be great in being able to incorporate their image in order to tell your story, it cheapens the things that they've already done.
This is a terrible thought. That's their first movie that they watch Val Kilmer. Or that's
Right,
the first movie that they knew who James Dean is, and it's like, oh, does he always act like a robot?
right, right,
you
right.
know?
The potential is that you're saying that this is something that actually happened. With the example I was saying using of Elvis Presley with an interview with Johnny Carson, that
Yeah.
never happened. Okay, and what you're doing is you're giving somebody the idea that it did happen, and it didn't.
It's kind of bizarre too, because it's like people will, I don't know, I mean, it costs money, right? It costs credits to make those videos, and it's like someone will be like, I spent $500 on credits of Elvis Presley talking to Johnny Carson, or of like Michael Jackson doing a dance over something crazy. And it's like, I mean, other than just like the personal satisfaction that you get out of some of this, what is the purpose here? Like I don't under. It's bizarre. Do you feel like it's going to just be a separate part of the world, or do you feel like it's going to be kind of into the industry in the film world?
That's really hard to say because basically what that comes down to is the integrity of whoever it is that's putting it out there. And for in large part, with so much of what's going on now, I think it's all about money making. It's what the shell game is?
No, what's that?
Is a street game. And there's a guy that or woman that sits on the corner, has a table set up. They have, three solo cups or three walnut shells or whatever. And under one of those cups is a little ball. And so they move the things, the cups back and forth. And then the person has to guess which cup the ball is under. So, you have the person out there doing their thing, and then you've got somebody called the shill who's working with. And so they come up and they say, well, it's under this. Oh, yeah, put down $5. Put down $5, and which one is it under? And the shill picks it and says, yo, look at that. Now you gather a bunch of people around you, and they're saying, well, this guy's making money left and right. Look at this guy, put $5 down, $5 down. He's 3 or 4 times, he's tripled, quadrupled his money. I want to get in on that. How much you want to put down? I'll put 20 down. And now you've got this other person, and he's playing with the guy with the cups, and he loses.
Yeah.
But I saw this other guy make money.
What's that? What's the deal? Yeah.
It's a con.
And people can feel it too. I think once
Oh, yeah.
the well is dry, it's hard to get that same group of people back to the shell game. They're done forever after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Then they don't know what to trust. They don't know what to believe. That's what the real threat is.
I feel like as a creator side, people need to be, who are against it, should be consistent. If you have no artificial generation in your film, put that on the poster, man. Like, put that anywhere. This is the hill that I choose to die on. And I feel like that's how you start to build back up trust with people. Because then again, someone could artificially generate this, and then I could be saying something completely different, which is...
That's right. And they twist it to mean something that the person who was already genuinely saying it, that was not their intent at all. And that's the difference, in my opinion. Tennessee Williams' intent in Streetcar or Sweetheart Youth or any of those things was to tell a story about people with these types of characters and putting them in this circumstance. That he knew people like this, and for the viewer to get something out of that. There's a certain religious quality to it. There's something that you are trying to tell people. There's something you're trying to teach people. Whether you're actually sitting down to teach them like in a classroom, I'm not saying that. But it's a way to teach people life. You're holding the mirror up to life.
Yeah. And being a voice for the people who don't have voices, like with Tennessee Williams, with the Streetcar of Desire, like particularly, no one was out there talking about that subdivision, I think it was Louisiana.
Yeah. So, but you have to understand, and that's where the willing suspension of disbelief comes in. I'm willing to believe that these people are who they are, and this is what's happening. It's not saying that the Civil War never happened, or what if the Civil War happened. It happened. Understanding that. Same thing with, what about Barry? What about him? What about his story? What his relationship with his wife, and how he navigates himself through a difficult time, and the choices that he makes as a result of those things, or the choice that he doesn't make as a result of those things. You're opening a door, and you're saying, I want to peek in on what's going on in this guy's life.
Do you remember the first time that a movie into that world where it was seamless?
I can remember something all too well. And I was about 8 years old, and my parents took my sister and I to the theater in New York. And there was a play that was being performed. It was called Story Theater. And it was a collection of stories like Aesop's Fables. The performers that came on with pretty much, their street clothes, amendments to what they were wearing at times in order to to kind of define their character. I fell in love with the idea of theater and of storytelling at that point. And I wanted to be able to do something in my life that was along those lines. This is a very cool thing to be a part of,
Hmm.
you know, and being able to tell the stories and reach out because it reached me, and I knew that it reached other people in the audience when they were telling these stories.
Hmm.
You know, because you would hear the audience response to that. You know,
Really?
to
So they
whatever.
would like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. What's did you ever have like a response when you were performing that kind of took you off guard with the amount of the audience was like, you know, into it
Yeah,
maybe?
there. Yes, absolutely. I mean, and there are those moments where you know where they tell you, you know, when you're in a live production, they'll say, hold for the audience response. You know, if there is one. You know, if they laugh, you know, you wait until they start coming down. But that doesn't mean that you're playing for the laugh. You're playing for that moment. And if the audience responds that way, then you have to give them a moment. And once they start coming down, then you pick up the rest of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing that I remember. It was very odd for me. My favorite environment to play in is like a black box theater.
Oh.
And I've played in a lot of different. I played in, a 3,000 seat theater, and I played in black box theaters and high school theater, all sorts of different theaters, um, at one time or another. And my favorite environment is a black box theater, and the reason is because you get the best of both worlds in a black box theater. With film, you have a certain intimacy because you get, the close-ups. And in the theater, in the same space as the story that's being told, right? And so as an audience member in a black box theater, you see almost everything that you would see on film with these people because you're so close to them. But the caveat that it was a thing that I was doing, it was for television. And it was one of these kind of murder things, and I played the bad guy. This one particular time, I remember I was being questioned, and I was on the lie
Lie
detector.
detector? Yeah.
They cut, and then they said, "Let's do it again." And the guy said, "Improvise if you want." I used, the words of the scene, but I also improvised the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of people there, everybody was, basically the only other people in the room were technicians, right? You had the people filming it, you had the people that were around makeup and hair, and all the rest of the people were on the periphery of it. Everybody was caught up in that moment. After the director cut, people were like, "Holy!"
That was good. Yeah. That
And it
was
was not it wasn't just my performance; it was the moment that was caught. The viewer on the other side of the screen watching it on TV may not get that same reaction, but
yeah.
their reaction was as if you were in a theater.
Yes, and that's an interesting thing because that's the disconnect sometimes between film and live performance. That's what's so hard about film sometimes is because you have so much space for manipulation. I worked with you on What's Up Barry, and we also worked on another project, Lost Melody. You were with finding those moments. I think in particular the moment with the closet, the climax. There was so much in the script. It was like two lines, right? It was like
Right.
he just walks in, and then something happens, and then goes like that. But then with you, you found the moment in that time too. And what I wasn't expecting was the camera guy also found the moment with you, you know? And then me and Sophia, who's the camera person, were just watching in the background with those moments, trying to just see what was gonna happen because it was real, you know?
That's the difference between just going with the script as written. Ideally, the script allows you the foundation for the moment. There's something that somebody is looking for in that moment. The script gives you the ingredients to make the soup. Whatever comes out of that adds to the flavor of the soup.
And it's important to know as filmmakers to not become overly dedicated to the written word or to not being open to ideas, because you could be missing out on a potential moment that could lead you into a truth, or lead
Right.
you to truth being a better project. That's when we're saying truth, we're just meaning like the thing that we connect with.
The truth is the moment. If in a scene you're drinking a cup of coffee, you don't act like you're drinking a cup of coffee. You drink the cup of coffee. And you're playing a scene where the character is cold, and it may be 75 degrees in the room, and somebody who is cold is not playing cold. They're trying to stay warm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what is it that you need to do in order to stay warm? That transitions to the audience as being, this person is cold.
How do you learn that? How do you learn the difference between acting with a capital A and acting with an A, with a soft A?
I always kind of get a little lost with the idea. Acting is something everybody does. There's the potential for it to be saying that this person is a liar, okay? Um, because, they're telling you something, that this fiction is the truth. And we're going back to the same thing we were talking before about AI. But the idea is an actor is a doer. Acting is something that you do, killing a person. Okay, there's the act of drinking a cup of coffee. You're acting. It's something that you're doing. My job is to eat a steak. You give me a steak knife or a table knife. It's gonna the act is going to be the same thing, but the challenge is going to be different because a table knife is duller than a steak knife. So effort in being able to do it, and the stuff that comes out of that, you're setting the situation up to be a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, but you're actually trying to do these things. It's that you're doing it. Acting is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called a play because you're playing.
That kind of goes back to what you're saying about, like, again, like, yeah, we did talk about the AI thing, but the humanity aspect,
That's
where
right.
it seems like you have to be like a student of humanity to be a student of acting.
That's what people touch on is the
Mm-hmm.
humanity of the character. I mean, when Barry comes home from his first day of the job
Mm-hmm.
and it's his anniversary, right? And he has this moment with his wife. That's something that a husband is worth it. He's going to be doing something like that. You
Yeah.
know, if he loves his wife, he's going to do the things that are going to, and people will connect with that. Hopefully, people will connect with that. Hopefully, I did it in a way where
Yeah.
somebody can connect with that.
Yeah.
That's the humanity that you're touching on.
Is it tough sometimes when you put in like the humanity, and then, like, because there's a disconnect, right? Like after you're finished with the role, it just sort of, you kind of have to step back.
There were some roles that where I played somebody who society would look negatively upon. Caught up in those moments where playing that character afterwards, looking back at it, that person really made me uncomfortable. And there were things that were asked of me made me very uncomfortable. There was at least one time when that happened that after a scene was shot, people were like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" Being able to step back out of that, and they would see that, okay, well, this is not who he is. But the fact that, and I was portraying somebody else who had actually done these things. I kind of did my research on the individual, and when you play somebody like that, you have to go in with the idea without judgment. They're not doing the things that they do with the idea that they're a bad person.
Yeah.
And outside of that, society says that that's bad, but the person playing that can't go with the idea thinking that, okay, I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
But afterwards, when I stepped out of that, I was like, where did that come from?
It can be
So
hard
yeah,
probably to like play back foot sometimes when those people come up to you and you're like, "Oh, I thought you were terrible," when you're like, "I'm not actually a serial killer, man. I promise you. Here's my teddy
Right.
bear I keep to my side. His name just happens to be Teddy. It's not related to
Right.
the guy." Not.
Right.
Uh,
I
yeah.
really like you. I like you.
When you get a character that is that problematic, is it exciting? Or is that something that you're like, this is a challenge? Or
I welcome it. Then because I read a script, I don't know, 200 times, or more,
wow.
because you're reading it for different things,
Mm-hmm.
and the first time you read it for the story to see what the story is,
Mm-hmm.
and then you read it, to see, what other people are saying about you. Then you read it and you see what you're saying about them, and you keep reading it over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one way to learn, lines as well. But
Do you find new things after the 50th time, or is it more like building into that muscle memory?
yeah, no, see, that's the thing, is that you should always be open to new things that happen, and each time you read it, kind of like when you go to see a film,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, well, that was a really good film, and then you go back and to see the film, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't see that in that moment. That was a really cool moment.
For me, I just like finished rewriting a script that I wrote 3 years ago because reading it again, I was like rediscovering it and finding like new experiences that I lived through in order to
Right.
put it into it. And it's sort of like I'm of two minds about this. So one mind, it's like this never would have happened if I didn't go through these experiences. But then it's also like, if I wait even longer, if I get even more experienced, then that eventualness will, lead to a sort of magnum opus, whatever the expectations are. But then is that just procrastination with a different level, with different skin on it?
Thing is that you're there to tell a story. Yes, there may always be a time when you say, well, I should have written this or written it that way or done this or done that, or it didn't turn out a certain way, or maybe if I had done this, it would be different. You can what if that stuff forever, and if you what if that stuff forever, it never gets done. Okay, so the best thing that happens is that for the moment that you've written what you've written, or a person is acting what they're acting, they're living truthfully, or they're writing things as truthfully in that piece as they can. That's the thing. That's one of the things that when people are making a film, they're saying, well, this is forever because you're documenting it, and there's nothing you can change, right?
Yeah.
Live theater you can change from night to night.
Yeah. Until ChatGPT makes a new one where it changes your performance whenever you want it
Right, right. Shit, I don't remember that.
It's like raising a kid or, whatever you want to, a pet or whatever resonates with that, because you can't coddle them, you can't overprotect the work, you can't do these things. You have to let it be its own thing and
Right,
let for it to leave you eventually, because
right,
there is a point where we talk about people interpreting everything. Like, I've personally heard different interpretations on your performance, like with regards to the ending, which is like wild and different. And honestly, it's something that I have no control over. If I told them the
right,
intention, it would mean nothing, you know?
right.
It would mean something. Maybe it would be a break of the illusion, but it wouldn't mean the same thing as it did to them before.
And
It-
and honestly, that it doesn't. What's important is not whether or not they get it right, because it. And if by getting it right, it means that they kind of go along with what your interpretation is. It's what they. It's interesting because what they take away from it is a reflection of them. Once it's out there, it's out of your hands, and the audience is going to decide, what they get from it.
It comes back. We're going a full circle. It comes back to the idea of craving for knowledge, the craving of like, oh, so knowledge in the terms of this art is this specific interpretation's right. This specific, perspective on the movie Blade Runner is the only one that's correct, which is like that Decker's a replicant, because that's the nature of art where
Right.
it's not knowledge, it's emotion.
Well, you're talking about Blade Runner. The first Blade Runner, that story, you know, told that story.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came around and they did the other Blade Runner, that's coming from a different. That's a different story. It's
Yeah.
similar, but it's a different story.
But differently, though, this is a weird example because Blade Runner originally came out theatrically, and the
Right.
studio completely changed the ending, and the director is vehemently put his foot down.
Right.
Well, the real director's cut didn't come out until 2000. It was in the 2000s or something like that. So
Hmm.
there was a period of time where it was like everyone's interpretation was different because they were seeing different things.
Right.
They were, and not just in the same movie. Sometimes it was beyond a director's cut or a TV cut or something else.
That's right.
Yeah, and those are those I guess are right, but they're coming from a wrong source.
Well, but see, that's the thing, is that when you shoot a film, there are several different stories that you can get by the way that you edit that film. You have to be careful by saying which one is right.
Yes.
There's because they're all right. It's just what's the story that you're telling.
Well, they if they're right, that's coming from a knowledge perspective, where it's like
Right,
either like a scientific perspective, where it's like it either is right or it's wrong. But
right,
like when you watch it now, if you're watching it like on your TV and it's the same movie as you go to a movie theater, your experiences are going to be different because the lights are going to go
right,
down and the sound you'll feel through the seats, and
right.
and that's going to be a different level of experience. What currently is inspiring you?
What's inspiring me? Well, life. Every day, being able to be um, a
Be open.
participant in that, and being and whether it's telling a story cinematically or theatrically, or that's real life.
Yeah.
Those are challenges. Seeing their humanity.
Seeing the humanity and
Yeah.
seeing it, that's so beautiful because there's so much that we can get lost in.
If you familiarize yourself humanity
Yeah.
and being sensitive enough, empathetic enough, provide moments for other people to see,
Hmm.
to to experience, but to see how somebody else gets out of it or how somebody else manages it. That's the important thing, because
Yeah.
it lets them know that they're not alone.
Yeah. Paul Stober, thank you for coming through. Thank you for coming out today. Is there anything that you wanted to finalize? Any notes to the people? Anything you want to shout out before we go?
I, the only thing that I would say, and I've been doing this for a little while, go with the idea of having fun with it. It's about living it and
Yeah.
about doing the work and giving yourself the opportunity. Every experience that you have, that a person goes through, is something that they can put into their art. When you presented me with the opportunity to work on Barry, um, that was a real treat for me,
It was for
and
me too.
I really enjoyed the people that I worked with. I liked being able to tell your story. I liked that you were open to um, exploring things and finding things out uh, about the story. And my my hope at that particular time, as well as now, is I hope that my participation in it, and that it told the story that you wanted, and that you were, I don't know whether happy with the result is really. I hope that there was. I hope that you were able to get something out of it that you may not have expected at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and but that it was that the final result was something that you could feel good about.
Well, yeah.
And um,
It
I
couldn't. Yeah, I was so I tried to hide it as much as possible. I was doing capital A acting during directing it because I was so scared, so nervous during the whole time because I didn't know, like, and I've talked about this before. I didn't know if there's like a particular word to use for directing, or I didn't know if there's like a certain handshake, a cool guy handshake. But I was so appreciative of how much you not only took, you brought me up to a point where it wasn't like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, he doesn't know you were able to bring your own voice to the character, as well as taking the project seriously, as well as taking me being a first-time director and helping me along in that way too. And that's something that I will never forget, and that is something that I really appreciate from you, Mr. Paul
well,
Stober.
well, you made it easy, Mr. Dylan Black.
There's so many times I wish we could work together, and I wish that money can fall into my hands so I can just make it all so much easier. I mean, I'm in Chattanooga right now, so if you could just
All right,
leave your
cool.
home and your wife and come to Chattanooga. There's no cruise line that goes directly there yet, but we're working on it.
But it would. I'd be cruising to get there. I'll tell you that.
That's true. Paul, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this podcast. Please watch What's Left to Bury. The link is in the description. And enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Peace out.